Maybe I've been don't feel rich, fuck with. I'ma make it so I don't feel shit. Come with me, come with me. Come with me, come.
Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have another build breakdown. It is something that is honestly kind of underrated, and that is a Toyota Cressida, which is behind me. A lot of people mistake this for like a Camry or like a weird Avalon or basically everything except for what it is. And if you don't know what this is a inline six rear wheel drive, 4-door Toyota, almost luxury sedan is how it was before they started doing Lexus stuff. So this thing's got a couple of cool features that, you know, the Camrys don't have, and also it's rear wheel drive. Let's bring Alex in here and we'll start talking about this thing. We'll go over the past, the present, the future, and then also things you want to look for if you decide to purchase one of these. Okay guys, so we got Alex here. Thank you so much for joining me. So why don't you start off first by talking about kind of the history of this car, how much you got it for, who you got it from, and then the state that it was in.
Yeah, so this is my 1992 MX-83 Toyota Cressida, and I got it from a coworker of mine for a pretty good deal. It was about $2,200 when I got it, and it's kind of hard to find one that's this clean in that price range. We usually see them going in anywhere from about $2,000 to $5,000 on like Facebook Marketplace or stuff like that. Usually though, these are somewhat high mileage, anywhere from like 160,000 to like 200 plus. The 7M GEs in these do a pretty good job of holding up over time, but they do have some like head gasket issues, which was mainly caused from under torque from the factory. I got pretty lucky here. This one, when I got it, only had about 79,000 on it. I'm currently sitting just around 90,000 right now because I do daily drive this thing. But when I bought it from my coworker, his father was a master technician, and he had fully done like head gasket, valve cover reseal, water pump, timing belt, and they took pretty good care of it for the most part. Everything when I got it was pretty nice. There were a couple leaks here and there in the engine, but since then I've taken care of it. It's been a pretty interesting experience, like actually build this thing out, and I've learned a lot about older systems and then like how, you know, getting parts for them can be a little bit of a pain sometimes, but for the most part I've had a lot of fun building it out. When I got it, it had stock wheels. It was, you know, full ride height. The struts were like completely worn out, so it was just really floppy when I was driving it around. Steering was kind of sluggish from here, but it is a 4-door sedan from, you know, the model year was like late 80s to early 90s, so that was kind of typically to be expected from these. But since then, handling's gotten way better with all the stuff that I've thrown on it.
So why don't we first start with the exterior of the car, because you've done quite a few things that make it like, it's already kind of an obscure, weird car, but then you've done a few things like the JDM front bumper and grille that make it even more less recognizable. So why don't you talk about this whole thing, because this is new.
Yeah, so the grille was from the S1 series of MX-83, so from 88 to 90 was what we consider to be an S1 Toyota Cressida, which had some different badging and some different interior pieces that they kind of later phased out. And then from 90 to 92, which is this year and actually the last production year in the United States, or that was sold here, came from Japan. They sold from 88 to 90, they sold them with the Japanese Toyota Cressida badge, and then from 90 onward, that's when Toyota made the Toyota emblem that we all know today. So they started swapping that on there. So this grille is from an S1, which I swapped on, and then the bumper is from a GX81 or Toyota Mark II, which fits on for the most part pretty nicely. Had a few fitment issues here and there, which you kind of have to like cut brackets, but for the most part, it, you know, if you have like a cutoff wheel and a drill, it'll go on just fine. You only need to make like 2 holes here and there, and it fits on for the most part pretty nicely. There are some kind of parts on the fender that poke out a little bit, but aside from that, everything's pretty solid. You do have to rewire the turn signals if you do want them to work. Unfortunately, this one doesn't even have the harnesses, which I actually still need to track down to make sure my front turn signals work, but aside from that, everything's bolted up really nicely. It was kind of a pain to track this down because I did have to buy it from a Japanese Yahoo auction site, so shipping was definitely a pain. That was about $900 for shipping, but I did get the bumper itself for about $60, so it kind
of $60 shipping, $900 bumper, and this thing is super nice. It brings this shelf, it brings it away farther in, Because normally you said they stick out like...
Yeah, I want to say it honestly sticks out about like 4 or 5 inches more because it's got like a huge crumple zone like foam bumper we see like on a lot of newer cars for like US safety regulations.
USDM stuff. So this brings the bumper in way farther, and then we've also got the Cressida grille and emblem right there. And then let's go over to wheels and tires. So obviously NK RPF ones, everybody knows them. What are your impressions of these on a Cressida?
On a Cressida, I do like them quite a bit. I was not a fan of RPF ones before, but I got a good deal from another coworker. He was selling the wheels and tires for about $1,000, which I jumped all over because the stock wheels for this thing, they're not bad, but unless you're gonna cut them up and turn them into some 3-piece, I don't care for them. So these I got for a really good price. They're running 205 55 R16s, and these are 16-inch wheels. I believe these are 7 inches wide, so it's not crazy. It's like it's kind of like a moderate spec for these, but it fits really nicely. And even with, I've got these on BC coilovers, even with 3.5 inches dropped in the rear and 3 in the front, I've had no rubbing or scrubbing issues. However, after I did replace the bumper and I had to maneuver the fender liner around, it's kind of scrubbing a little bit, but I'll take care of that at some point. But so far the tires and wheels have been great. I know some people will run 18s and run really thin tires, and it's like, if you want to do that, but that's not how I like mine to look.
Yeah, I definitely like this look a lot more on this car. It's definitely period correct with having the chunkier tires and the smaller wheels, and then it also makes it ride so much better. Because that sidewall is a lot of your suspension, which people forget until they throw on tiny rubber bands and they're like, my car drives horrible now. So
I know I'm planning on upgrading the tires later. I really want to throw Michelin Pilot Sport all season 4s on because here in the Pacific Northwest, if you have summer tires year round, you're gonna crash your car. Yeah. So I really want to make sure I get some nice all seasons on there, but I'm also kind of waiting to see if certain wheel packages become available later that are not currently on the market, because I really want to put tri-spokes on, but I honestly have really come to enjoy the RPF ones.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier, the Advan Oni 2s, which I also want actually, they don't come in this bolt pattern yet.
Yeah, there's no 5x114.
Yeah, but what would be cool is if you got those, then you throw like an all season on those, and then you throw a summer tire on the NKs, because these are lighter.
Yeah.
So then you could do like a summer wheel and tire setup and then a winter wheel and tire setup.
It would be nice, and I definitely have somewhere to store them, because I currently have my stock wheels sitting and taking up a lot of space, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do with those. So it would be nice to have a seasonal rotation of wheel and tires, especially because right now with all the potholes we got after the winter, I've been super nervous driving these things around because I'm really worried I'm gonna like crack a spoke or crack the barrel or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for the rest of the exterior, it's a pearl white color, which is I've really enjoyed. Looking at keeping clean is another story, because this is 30-year-old Toyota paint, and apparently something I didn't know is that Toyota paint is very difficult to repaint and color match nowadays unless you're going to do the whole body. So on my passenger side fender, there was a little bit of damage. It was rusted and dented in. It's how I bought it from my coworker. Even before he had it, it had a dent in it. And I was trying to get quotes for having them repainted, and everyone was like, well, I guess it's water-based paint from what I've heard from some of my painter friends. That car paint to me is a whole different world. I don't work on, I'm not a body tech.
Stage, 2-stage, whatever, it's got lead in it. I have got no idea either.
But apparently actually having it repainted and stuff like that would essentially would make the bumper or the fender potentially a completely different color, which whatever. So when I was taking the bumper off, I decided to take the fender off, sand down the rust, use like a brass punch and kind of get that edge back in there, and I just threw some touch-up paint on there so it doesn't rust, and it's there.
It's a good, I mean, it won't show up on camera from about 5-ish feet, so I think we're pretty good here.
It looks better than it did.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point of what I'm trying to do on this car. A lot of people drift these things. This is a pretty popular upcoming drift option because people are crashing everything else. They're wrecking all their, 300 ZXs, and they're just kind of, Supras are ridiculously expensive. So people are deciding to drift these because it's rear-wheel drive. It's got an inline-6. They're really easy to throw a manual on, which is actually something I'm in the process of doing right now. I'm having a W58 rebuilt because that'll just bolt right onto the 7M. Because that is what the Mark III Supra had. It came with the 7M or 7M GTE, depending on what you got. We come with a W58 for the, I don't know if it came with the W58 for the turboed version. I think that had an R154 in it. But I'm pretty sure that the 7M GEs in those came with the W58, so it'll just bolt right up for the most part, but you just need, you know, it's a swap, so you have to get clutch pedal, lines, master cylinder, slave cylinder. You need a couple bolts for actually getting the bell housing on.
And then you said you also got to get, is it a different gear so your speedometer is correct?
Yeah,
or?
you need to get a new, I think it's like the speed drive gear or something like that that goes right into the transmission. Otherwise it's, you know, you're dealing with different final drive ratios, so your speedometer isn't going to be completely accurate. But it is what it is.
Yep. And then, is there anything else for the exterior?
I mean, I got the chrome door handles on there. Those are also from a GX81, which is a Mark II, just Toyota Mark II. And these, for the most part, they'll fit right in perfectly. They'll slot right in. The rears go on perfect. They'll just slide right in. The fronts were a little bit more difficult to get on. I did not know that Toyota, I guess, in the late 80s, for the Japanese market and the US market, used two different styles of like door actuator rod. So for the US market, it's just a rod that comes up with a little hook, and then on the actual door handle, there's a slot with a bushing or a little grommet or whatever, and it just clicks in, and there you go. But it's the exact opposite for Japan. It's a rod with a little hole in it, and then there's the bushing in there, and then the actual door handle has like a little peg that slides in. So for the door handles, I had to sit there with a little drill and bore it out, and I believe it was the driver's side, perfect. Everything was in fine. Passenger side, I overbored it just a little too much and had to fill it in with some Bondo and then drill it out again, and it's been fine ever since. I just replaced the clips for the doors, for the little actuator. Everything's good there, but I think these are a really nice touch. Also, just a little tip if you're dealing with chrome, pretty much anything, if you just get like, is it 2/0 or 3/0 steel wool, and you just hit it, it'll get rid of all the oxidization on there. Like, it'll just freshen up so well. So these used to be like super kind of dingy on the inside of the door handles. I just hit it with a little bit of that, and it's like a mirror finish afterwards. It's great. So if you ever get anything chrome and you need it taken care of, it's usually really simple.
Yeah.
And then on the rear, coming all the way back over here, I have the, I believe this came off of, I actually don't know if it was a Mark II or a Chaser or a Cresta, because they all use the same X platform. In Japan, it was like the same platform, just different body style and kind of interior features depending on if you wanted a more luxurious car or a sporty car. So I bought that off of another Japanese auction website. It's fun. I mean, the other one was just, you know, key slot, put in the key, turn it. This one has the whole latch. It's got the Cressida emblem. It kind of makes the rear end freshen up a little bit, because I don't have a short bumper, which is what the Cressida community calls them. The JDM short bumper for the rear, because those are even harder to track down. And then I've got a tow hook on there that like a JDM tow hook that the previous owner had on there, and I don't mind it. I kind of like how it looks, but it's kind of on there, and I don't really have any intention on taking it off. And then I have some random muffler tip on the end there, because it's going back from headers to cat to the resonator, and then I took the actual muffler off and just had piping welded up back from the resonator. So that's just some random muffler tip that I had thrown on there, just to make it look nice and purty. But I think for the exterior, for the most part, that's it. Everything else is either under hood or under the whole car.
Okay, awesome. So that is your outside look of the Toyota Cressida. So let's go into the interior now. You've done a decent bit to the interior, including seats and a wheel, and then freshened up a few other things. So
yeah, so there is a D&D Racing or some company wheel in there. That was in there when I bought the car. My coworker that I bought from, he threw that in there. It's super nice. I like it. The stock wheels were really big. It was a boat wheel. I mean, they're not huge cars, but at the time, like for a Japanese car in America, these were pretty big. So I definitely enjoy having the smaller wheel in there.
I guess that was probably also for it being like a luxury car, you know, bigger wheel, it's gonna be easier to turn.
Yeah,
so
these were the most luxurious cars that Toyota sold in North America before Lexus was created for the US market. It was by a Cressida. I think at the time these were around $30,000 full trim level in the United States, which I think is somewhere around like $52,000 now. It's kind of the equivalent to like the current Toyota Crown that we're selling here in North America, but obviously, you know, 30 years ago. It has I guess like a Euro spec rally mirror that kind of encompasses the whole front of, or the whole top of like the sun visor area. I have no sun visors. It's just this huge mirror, which has actually been really nice because, you know, this is way before they were coming up with backup cameras or anything. So your visibility was your windows. If you did not have big windows and you couldn't see, you might get yourself into an accident. So with a combination of having the huge windows, putting that mirror in, you can just see everything. Like, I check my blind spots, but I really don't have to with this because I can pretty much see the 2 lanes next to me at all time, which is nice. I've got a dash cover in there to prevent, you know, the dash from really cracking. It's got 1 or 2 cracks. It's kind of like that soft plastic material, so it's not like a hard split crack like you'll see on older Fords and stuff like that. I have the dash cover on there just to kind of prevent that from happening. Also keeps, you know, the sun from flying everywhere. It's nice. It does its job, I guess. The wheel's been nice. Another thing too, the stock wheel didn't have an airbag. This car has no airbags. This was, I think, right before the like the federal mandate for all the big safety stuff was included. So like it has seat belts, but I'm pretty sure at this time they weren't like actually legally required to lock or anything. So the seat belts don't lock. Like, you can pull on them, they're not doing anything. They might stop you from flying out the window, but you're gonna go forward and you're gonna hit something. So yeah, there's no airbags, no locking seat belts. It is what it is. It's got the automatic seat belts. Those will come down. Those all work, which is super nice, but they don't lock. It's got a lap belt. That doesn't lock either. So I'm, you know, if I ever crashed this car, I probably wouldn't be able to live myself, but if I crashed it, I'm probably not going to either, because there's no safety features, so I'd probably end up dying with the car, which is probably not going to happen because of all the handling stuff I've done, which has made this thing just super nice to drive. But I also have done the seats on the interior. So this came with vinyl seats, which were, I don't know if they're necessarily an add-on or if it was kind of like just the trim level this came with, because these don't have like LX, DX trim levels like other Toyotas of that time did. It was like, here's a Cressida and here's some interior options, like if you want you know, classic 80s 70s like all red leather interior, which looks crazy. I know that's huge in Australia. They love it. There was also full blue, gray, and tan. I have the original like owner's manual brochure, and it lists like 12 different interior colors because it was like cloth or vinyl.
So would that, I don't know if you know, but would that have been up to the customer to option out their thing, or do you think they just made a bunch and then shipped them out, or do you think the dealerships optioned them out? Because like, this is before, you know, it's kind of before you go online and pre-order your car and click every box that you want to. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how many of each was made.
I don't know how much control the like customer had over that decision. Like if they really got to choose which they got with what. It just kind of lists an option of like what the car has and what usually is like sold as a package combined as is. So it's like, okay, you're not going to get this unless you also have this option, which is,
it's like, I mean, did they all come with sunroofs? Because it could be like, what if like, you're probably not going to option out, be like, yeah, no sunroof, powered seats, leather seats.
I'm pretty sure in the United States they only came with sunroofs. I could be wrong about that, but I have not ever seen a single hardtop in the US, and I don't believe they came as, I don't think it was an option. I'm pretty sure it was stock, because this was luxury. You know, why even think about having a sunroof? It's just there. It's just going to be on the car. The things I do know that were optional was the type of media center you had. So if you wanted a CD player, it was either, you know, metal cassette or metal cassette and CD. ABS was also optional. This car does have the ABS. To my knowledge, this car came with the vinyl interior and ABS. and the upgraded sound system. So I'm pretty sure that this was like highest United States spec that you could get at the time. In Canada, they did have some other options that we didn't get, such as the headlight washer, like wipers, heated seats, which I would have really liked to have. From a car from 88 to 92, having heated seats is,
I mean, that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, there's cars that come out now that don't have heated seats.
Yeah, I mean, this has power seating in the front driver's seat regardless from what I've seen. I haven't seen a driver's seat without the power settings. However, the passenger side was, I believe, it was a combination of the trim. So if you had the vinyl interior, you had a powered passenger seat. If you had the cloth interior, you had a manual passenger seat. I've actually swapped the interior over to cloth because my vinyl seating was getting super torn up. There were chunks missing out of the driver's seat. It was looking super ratty. And I got reupholstery quotes, and it was like $800 per seat. I'm like, I don't really have that kind of budget right now. So I found someone parting them out, and I got a full set of cloth interior, a gray cloth interior for $200. I only got the seats and then the rear bench seat assembly thing, but the door cards will also match that trim. So if they're vinyl, you'll have vinyl door cards. If they were cloth, you'd have the cloth door cards. It was a little different material, but they tried to match the trim the best they could. But the passenger seat in this is the manual seat because it's cloth, but it weighs like, I think it's like 50 to 60 pounds less than the power seat did because it doesn't have all the motors, all the windings, everything in there. So between that and then doing the bumper, which the JDM bumper is also, I want to say, like 60 pounds lighter. So the whole thing weighs like 110, 120 pounds less than it did prior, and you can feel it. Like anytime you drop any major piece of weight out of this thing, you can feel it. So as far as the interior goes, I've done a couple things inside, and otherwise it's just kind of keeping everything clean. So on the door cards, there's a little like courtesy light, open door light that comes on, and normally they have like red lenses. I swapped on the JDM clear ones. It's actual Toyota part from Japan. I'm pretty sure they came on all of the X chassis for Japan. So Cresta, Mark II, I believe it's just even probably Camrys and other things. Like it's just a very generic part number. I threw those on, which is super nice. I only have like the standard amber bulbs in there right now, but theoretically if you wanted to go crazy and throw red or purple, I know a couple dudes who have done that, and it looks nice. But it's nice because when I actually open my door, it's dark, I can actually see what's underneath the car.
Oh, that's pretty cool, because
the red lens on there is just really restrictive. Like you can see it, but this is clear, so it's like actually illuminates whatever you're opening up. Like I said, this thing has fully working power automatic seat belts. They don't do anything. They just kind of sit on your shoulder, and full police officers, if you're not actually buckled in, because they can't tell, but they work. They've got like a tiny adjustment depending on, I guess, if you're a larger person or not, but they don't really do anything. They don't unbuckle. You can't take them out of anything. And what's really nice about these, unlike other ones that were on Hondas, is they're not on the door. They're on the actual pillar for the vehicle. So you're not, tearing them off or anything when you're opening the door, getting them caught. So they're pretty convenient. Another part out, I swapped the seat belts from because the ones I had in my car were getting super ratty and super torn up. So I wanted to swap them because this is not a conventional part number that you can find or really anywhere, and no one parts them out. No one like really does their due diligence for the community and like selling these, because usually they get pretty torn up. But it's weird that both seat belts are actually connected to one whole assembly that you have to take out essentially the entire armrest center console area, and it like just anchors in. They're all one assembly, and it rolls out from the little armrest area. So it was kind of it was interesting to replace them because it's just such an odd, like very specific part, and then they just bolt right up in here, and I'm just ugga-dugga down. So hopefully, they're not going to go flying off. But even if they did, they're not doing anything. Again, I have the like Euro style rally mirror, super nice. Love having that. The sunroof on this is it obviously fully retracts, and then it also does a little raised thing. I don't know what
a little pop-up.
A little pop-up.
Yeah, for extra downforce.
Normally it does that. This one, I lifted up one day and I heard a click sound, and this corner doesn't go up anymore. So I have a new sunroof assembly that I'm waiting to swap in when I have another day off. That it's also nice, but it's very hard to predict the weather here. So that's in the works, because I don't know exactly. I'm assuming it's like the actual arm broke off, or maybe it's super simple and it's just something loose. But sometimes when I'm driving really fast, I can hear a part rattling around in there, but not just rattling, like actually like flying around back and forth. So something needs to be replaced. Pretty much everything in this car, for the most part, is power, or automatic. It's got electrical adjustments, so all the windows are, just power windows that you can control from any of them. It's got a window lock. It's all power locks, no key fob, but I'm sure I could rig something up. The mirror adjustment is all power controlled. There's a little knob next to the steering wheel that adjusts them. I've also got the ever so exclusive Toyota Gooch Cooler 9000.
Oh, the Gooch Cooler!
I have a Gooch Cooler, and it's very nice. AC in this thing blows really cold. I did I think it's a R134 conversion on this from the R12, and it's been very nice. It's been very nice having air conditioning that's legal, and I can legally recharge it.
You're not using that Chinesium R12?
No, I'm good. I enjoy having access to refrigerant still. It has a really accurate little clock on the kind of dash waterfall, which is, it's not identical, but it is a very similar dash layout to like Mark IV Supras. It's got a little bit of like a connection to like the Mark III, because it's like pretty Mark III Supra. It's pretty similar. Obviously, it's missing like oil pressure gauge, and there's no boost gauge. There's nothing crazy like that. But it's pretty streamlined. I have a speedometer and a giant tachometer, which this came stock with the auto. They only came in automatic in the United States. But it's kind of odd that there's just this giant tachometer, but it's there. It works. All my gears, obviously, everything's up there, super clean. This is an S2, so this was 90 to 92. The 88 to 90s, you may have seen them out there. It's got the weird radio HVAC controls where the whole like board on the waterfall, you'll press a button and it's a motor and it comes out, and it has the pictures of like which setting does what on the front. And then the actual adjustments are on the top. And it's like super cool. It's like a really quirky, like late 80s feature. I'm assuming they switched off of it because like even in those production years when they were brand new, they were breaking, and suddenly like you can't control your HVAC controls, or it's a distraction. You're driving and you're pressing something to change your AC that's like motorized, and you're waiting for it. So now the cluster just looks like a million buttons, which is fine. I have muscle memory. I know I can just look over and press the button. So I put a new head unit. It's like a Sony X something 8. I don't know. It's a touchscreen head unit. It's really nice. Has its own volume knob, which is super cool, because for the audio system on these, they had like a built-in factory amp. And what happens is the amps, after 30 years, they die. It happens. And the amp is also what controls it sends power to like the audio controls. So if that amp dies and you need to put a new head unit in, unless it's got onboard controls, you're not using your audio controls at all. So
you're stuck listening to whatever volumes it's at, or is it just not work at all? And
I'm not a fan of like the touchscreen like volume controls. I'm like, if I'm adjusting volume, I want a knob. This has a knob. It's great. It's awesome. I love having this head unit in there. Even though it's like a touchscreen head unit, I have like a gray wallpaper, and it honestly kind of just fits everything. Like, it doesn't look super off. I've never been like, that looks like, some super RGB crazy head unit in like a 2005 Civic. Like, it doesn't look super off. This has a cigarette lighter and an ashtray in it, cigarette ashtray that fully comes out and detaches so you can clean. It's got like a little storage unit which was designed for cassettes. You can fit like 4 in there. It's got like a little area for you to put your keys. This thing is equipped with the super awesome Toyota Power ECTS option, so you can shift your 3-speed at like 3,000 instead of 2 automatically, which is like you get what you can out of this automatic, which I'm super excited to put the manual in because this thing is a slush box. This thing does not shift very well, and it's not very fast. You got a really nice centered e-brake in this thing. Super fun. Handbrake, emergency brake, whatever you want to call it, parking brake, right there in the center. Super easy to grab right there. So if you are going to do some crazy drifting with it, it's right there. And then the center armrest, I actually took the lid off of it because this thing has 2 pop-out cup holders right on the waterfall. And as you can imagine, a 30-year-old Japanese car does not have cup holders that fit modern American beverage sizes. So you get anything larger than like a medium at like McDonald's, even that is gonna like hit the rest of the infotainment. You need like a small. You're fitting maybe a McFlurry in that thing, and that's it. Like nothing more.
Rated for 1 McFlurry.
1 McFlurry, 2 McFlurries, because it's 2 cup holders.
Okay.
So I took the armrest off, and underneath it has like a little slot for change and whatever else, because that's the only thing you can use as a cup holder for modern beverages, because it's got this big slot in there. So that's my cup holder, and that's what I use. This thing supposedly has pretty good sound options. It's got 2 speakers in the door cards, 2 speakers behind the passenger seats, and supposedly 2 speakers in the dash here, kind of where your knees are. I don't ever hear any sound coming out of them, so I don't know if they're just blown or if...
Can you see the speaker, or is it just an empty grill?
It's kind of hard to look through it because it's like...
What if you don't have speakers there?
You know what, I maybe need to look into that. But as far as the rear goes, you just have like a big comfy bench seat. It feels like a couch. It's a couch. Like this thing is comfort, luxury. Like it feels like you're sitting in a couch back there. Of course, businessman, you get the little clothing hanger for all of your fresh dry cleaning.
Oh, yep, your suits.
Armrest folds down in the rear, and you do have full like seat belts for your passengers. I've loaded 5 people up in this thing before, myself and 4 other people, before it was lowered, and that was not fun. Of course, the struts could have been blown, but I do not recommend fitting 4 extra people in the car. Not from my experience, unless you're going to put on like super high rated springs and shocks and that. But yeah, I think that does it for the interior.
Okay. Awesome. So guys, we're going to transition now over to the engine, which has gotten quite a bit of maintenance, as well as you've done quite a bit of cleanup in here, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of oil in here when I first got the vehicle. It did have the valve covers resealed, so there wasn't anything coming from there, and the hood struts, which do work.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about actually this engine and the whole drivetrain platform a little bit more, and then as well as everything you've done, and then kind of where you've sourced parts from for this, because it is an older car, so a lot of people are probably asking you, they're like, where'd you find this? And you're like, I looked really hard and found it.
So this thing has a 7M GE engine, which was the same you could find in a naturally aspirated Mark III Supra. It's connected to some random automatic transmission in it. It's like I don't know, AU set, I don't even remember. I don't care about this automatic enough to remember its name. All I know is that it needs to come out of the car. The engine itself, it's a 3-liter inline 6, so you know it's.
So what's a 2J?
It's the grandfather to the 2JZ. Japanese in Japan, I believe it was. I think it was the Chaser, and then I don't know if the Cresta had a 1JZ, but I think also a couple optional Mark IIs later on had some as well. We never got 1Js in these here, or I think in really any other territory for the Cressidas. They were just they gave us a 7M and told us to do what we could.
Did the earlier one of these comes with a 5M? Because, or is that?
The Cressida, so these are all, we refer to them all by their like chassis code that you can find in the VIN number. So this is an MX-83, so from 88 to 92. So the MX-73, which is I think 87 to like 82, that had a 5M in it with 5-speed.
And those were the ones that had the overheating issue, didn't they? I feel like I remember.
These have overheating issues potentially.
Oh, okay.
So what happens on these is that the head gasket wasn't torqued down all the way from factory. They got the wrong torque spec. So pretty much cylinder 6 would overheat and your head gasket would just go. So these had major head gasket issues, and that was everyone's biggest concern with them. So pretty much the solution is either, take it off, deck the block, take care of that and put like an MLS on there. You can use a standard composite one. You just have to, either way, no matter what you do, whether it's a MLS or composite head gasket, you just have to give it a higher torque spec. That torque spec is out there. I didn't actually do the head gasket on this. The prior owner did. I don't know what that torque spec is off the top of my head.
Was that ever a recall? Did they ever recall it and then bring them back to the dealership for them to do that?
I actually don't know if it was. I mean, I know that pretty much that's the solution everyone does now, but there are so many of these out there still that have head gasket issues that I doubt that it was ever a national recall or anything like that.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's very un-Toyota-like. It's just not, you have huge engine issues just because your torque spec wasn't right. But that's the solution, is pretty much you just put a new gasket on there, just resurface the head, or if you want to go as crazy as like resurfacing the block or having it decked, and then just higher torque spec and you're good.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, the 7Ms, they're really torquey.
Does anyone just pop the valve cover off and torque, just tighten it up a little bit?
I don't think I've ever seen anyone go that far. These are not very hard to pull the heads off of it all. I mean, pretty much you just like take the intake out of the way, obviously take everything out of the top. Honestly, the most difficulty I've heard people taking these off is taking off the throttle plate, because it's got like a coolant line running to it that just loves to break when you take it off. But aside from that, and then on the intake, you have like a cold start injector, and apparently those can give you a little issues too here and there. But it's, if you can pull an injector on just the head, you should be fine. You should be fine if you need to replace it. But the 7Ms, they're pretty torquey, but the automatic transmission is just such a limiting factor in your power delivery with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, with that whole luxury feature, it was probably built to be slow. Even if you slam on it, they want that smooth acceleration. Yeah. That slow, smooth acceleration where you don't feel anything. So, yeah, once the manual's in this thing, it's definitely going to have a bit more pep, and it'll shave a couple seconds off your 0 to 60. Why don't you talk a bit about everything that you've personally done to the engine bay?
So as far as engine bay stuff goes, a lot of maintenance. So I've done spark plugs, wires, the distributor, the cap. I actually took the distributor off, or for the cap and rotor, I took the distributor off, replaced the O-rings on the actual shaft and the outside, because I thought I had an oil leak coming from the inside of the distributor. It wasn't the case, and I kept tracking it down, and I eventually found out what it was. New ignition coil. I have a Cusco strut bar on there, which has definitely helped handling quite a bit, going into corners and stuff. There's way less body roll up front. Obviously, I've had to do stuff like new battery, new alternator, which this is actually the second car that I've bought that has had an alternator fail on me within the first 3 months, between the hours of 11 and 2 in the morning, while I was driving around with my best friend Miles. It's happened twice for some reason.
It's because when you're out there at that late, you've got the speakers cranked a little bit more. That's why it does it. It draws too many amps.
Well, the funny part is, before I put that new head unit in, the other one was connected to the amp, and the amp would kept going in and out. So I didn't even have audio going in this thing when it happened. But this thing stock has a 80 amp alternator, which is which is low. I mean, it's not pushing a lot, especially considering how many electronics are in this car and how poorly optimized that usage of power is, considering it's like a 34-year-old car now, or 32 years old. You know, you've got pretty much any time I've got the engine going and I adjust my power seats, I can watch my revs drop like 200 and my lights dim. I believe on Drift Motion's website, they do sell an alternator that's rated at about 130 amps. And that is, for the most part, from what I've seen, it just bolts right on. These alternators are really easy. Pretty much you just loosen one nut, you know, the adjuster kind of slides off, the belt comes off. It's right there up front. So they're pretty straightforward, but the only alternator in the area, because this is my daily, the only alternator in the area was up at some AutoZone in Tigard. So pretty much like the day before I had to go back to work, I had to drive out to Tigard, pick it up, drive back the next day, throw it in, and it's all good now. But I'm probably gonna throw another alternator in this thing so I can actually run subs, because I'm terrified that that would just destroy this car. Aside from that though, it's just pretty much been cleaning stuff, you know, like I've done all the fluids on it. I do oil changes regularly, about 2,000 miles. Like I'm pretty on time with doing the oil changes. Sometimes I've done them at like 15. The maintenance schedule for this car is like really odd. Like it tells you to do the rear diff fluid like every 15,000. 15,000, do the diff fluid, take care of it. So that's, you know, trying to keep up with all of that. It's a pretty straightforward maintenance plan. I mean, whether or not you actually want to adhere to like a maintenance plan or not is up to you, but I think like fluids and stuff, fluids do break down, you know, they get contaminated. It's good, you flush them out and replace them. So I had that oil leak I was talking about. I was trying to track it down, and it kept coming from the top, like literally by the head all the way down. And it was a combination of like there was oil on from the head down to the block all the way down, or that it was right next to the heat shield on the headers, so it was burning off. So I couldn't tell like actually how much oil was leaking, but pretty much every like 200 miles or like every like 2.5 weeks, I was losing like a quart of oil. And I get a little spendy with my oil. I do like to run AMSOIL in mine, which gets extremely expensive because this takes 10W30, and AMSOIL is like signature synthetic 10W30 is like $18.99 a quart, and this thing takes like pretty much right at like 5 quarts. So, you know, like already putting another like $40 in oil on top of an oil change every month was ridiculous. I'm like, I have to find this leak. So finally, it was after like spraying it down with brake clean, like waiting for something to pop up, I found out that the oil pressure sender switch on the block was like leaking at the very top, because I grabbed the harness and like literally just squeegeed oil out of it. And I'm like, why do I need this? Because it's getting its oil pressure from the oil pump. That's what tells me when it's like low on oil, it is low pressure. So what is this doing? And it was apparently on the 7M GTEs, or just for, I don't know if the 7M GEs utilize it, but it was just Mark III Supra has an oil pressure cluster on the dash.
Yeah.
This does not. That's the only thing it does, is it just tells how much pressure is going to that gauge. That's all it does. So on this, they just left it for probably production costs. They saw no reason to...
Wait, so does it still have the sensor and the wiring?
It did, yeah.
And then there's just no gauge?
Nope.
Okay.
It's just probably going to some random connector up there in the dash that isn't plugged in.
Weird.
Yeah, it was just on there. So I was like, well, can I buy a sensor for it to throw in there just to stop it from leaking? Or something. So Toyota, I'm pretty sure to this day, for their oil pressure sensors, uses British pipe thread. That is the fitment for the oil pressure sensor. They came up with it because they were looking at all the different manufacturers, and they're like, oh, we're gonna go with this one for this specific part, and that's it. So I was talking with some of the guys at our parts department, and our manager comes out and he's like, what are you guys talking about? And I explained pretty much the whole thing to him, and he's like, oh, I have the perfect thing for you. So apparently on 22Rs, the oil pressure sensor could be located in 2 different positions, depending on if it was like 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive for the motor mount. So he was just like, all right, we're gonna throw on this plug that the 22Rs, We're gonna throw on this plug, like here you go, it's like a $3 plug that the 22Rs use to fill up that space on either side, like the one that it wasn't being occupied. And it's just British pipe thread, and on the very end it's got a 10mm head on it. I bought it, it was like 40 across America that they still have. Threw it in there, tightened it down, it's all good.
Perfect.
No more leaking. So now I don't have my oil pressure light flashing at me because I'm actually like 1.5 quart low on a inline 6 with a massive oil pan.
Yeah. Okay guys, so that's pretty much everything for the engine bay. It's pretty straightforward. There's quite a bit of information on these, right? The 7Ms. I mean,
there's a lot out there.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of aftermarket support for this car just because of like drifting, and it's a Toyota. So there's lots out here. It's just you got to dig a little bit.
You're going to Supra forums.
Yep.
Is where you're getting all your info, because none of the Cressida guys really know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So Mark III Celica Supras. This is going to be all your stuff right here. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about the suspension, which actually you've put the most money and time into.
Yeah, so while the transmission swap is kind of in the middle of hiatus / parts gathering, really the most crucial thing you can do on this car is the suspension, considering engine modification is kind of limited unless you're going to like fully build it out. So starting with the suspension stuff, front end wise, I've put in a new steering rack that I got from Rock Auto. It does the job, like I haven't had any issues with it. The previous one was leaking from the bellows and it was getting really sloppy. These had a really interesting design for their steering racks where there's no mount or bolt necessarily on the steering rack. It just kind of sits on these two little grooves, and you pretty much put these two cups over the bushings that slide over the steering rack, and that's all it holds it. So after they wore out, those bushings wore out quite a bit, what happened is when you'd like fully turn lock to lock, depending on how worn out they were, it would essentially just start moving the steering rack around, which was very annoying. And I noticed that when I first got this was that, you know, I'd turn all the way to the left, and then when I recentered the wheel, it was going one way. I'd go all the way to the right, center the wheel, and it was going some other direction. So trying to do an alignment was impossible. Trying to keep it straight during daily driving was miserable. So I replaced the steering rack with just a generic one I got off Rock Auto, because really there's not too many other options out there. Some people replace these with the MX-73 Cressida steering racks because you get a little bit more turning radius, but you're gonna have to end up rebuilding it because they're OEM and they're worn out. As for the actual steering rack bushings, to make sure that doesn't happen again, I went with the excessive manufacturing polyurethane steering rack bushings. Pretty much excessive manufacturing and drift motion are going to be your two best friends. Rock Auto is going to have a lot of little stuff, but in terms of like performance improvements or upgrades, especially when it comes to anything rubber on this car, bushings like that, you're going to want to go with excessive and then drift motion for anything they don't have. But we got that taken care of for the steering rack. Put just two new tie rod ends again off of Rock Auto on here. I put on new lower control arms because in order to actually get the ball joint out and then to press out the bushing, it's like you have to like do some drilling and find a new random size one. I'm like, let me just see if I can find lower control arms. I went on to Summit Racing and I bought a set, and then they emailed me like 2 weeks later and like, actually they don't make these anymore. Bought another set and they're like, okay, we have these, we'll ship them to you. So I got the two new lower control arms that have brand new ball joints, brand new bushings, so it's all good there. I'm running BC coilovers. I have no idea what the spring rate on these is because I bought these off of Facebook Marketplace. The set is normally like $1,200. This dude didn't install them on the front, only the rear, and let it sit, and it was like $600. I'm like, cool, I'll take it. The interesting thing about these with the struts for the front on the kind of McPherson style front strut is that there's no actual mount for where the bottom of the strut would meet like the steering arm on the knuckle. It's the strut and spindle are one assembly. So if you want to put really any replacement strut on the front, whether you're going with like OEM replacement or if you're doing coilovers or anything like that, you have to pretty much chop you have to chop most of the old strut off and leave about like 50 millimeters left of material on there. And then in the case of the BC coilovers, where they have that like sleeve at the bottom, you pretty much take that like mount, weld that on, and then just thread in your coils, which actually make it easier to service in the future, because if you have to replace the strut or the spring or anything, you just unthread it and you don't have to worry about it. So you just need someone to weld those up unless you know how to weld. I took mine to a coworker, had that all taken care of. And then when you're using any coilovers, really anything where you're going to lower your car a lot and you're going to change the geometry on these, everyone recommends that you run roll center adjusters or RCAs. So it pretty much fits between the steering knuckle and then like the spindle on the hub. So it just gives it good, like I think it's like 1.5, 2 inches of clearance, just so that your tie rods aren't like super, you know, cockeyed all the time when you're driving. It just helps with the steering angle and kind of bump steer when you're driving around. And then while you have everything torn apart, I just went ahead in the front and replaced the wheel bearings, because you already have the hub off the spindle if you're going to weld it, if you're going to be careful about it. So I just, you know, before I slapped them on, threw new wheel bearings in there. Everything was driving good in the front. So on the front, Excessive Manufacturing makes these new traction rods for this. So the traction rod's kind of like a trailing arm, pretty much runs from like the middle of the lower control arm, kind of like straight up to kind of where like the sway bar is in the front. And pretty much by factory, it told you to like pretty much loosen this nut and then put a bunch of these spacer clips in and then tighten it down, and that would adjust your caster. And it's like you could do that, or you could replace it with like a much beefier one that has 2 adjustable nuts, and then the actual traction rod has like a long thread. So all you have to do is just adjust them and then, you know, lift it up if you're doing alignment and do a caster sweep and get your new caster measurement, which I have these set a little bit more positive than they came stock, which definitely helps for like turn-in radius, and I haven't noticed any scrubbing issues. Nothing like that, no like major issues with like setback or anything. For some reason, one of the biggest handling improvements I noticed on this car, which still baffles me, was replacing the front sway bar bushings with polyurethane bushings. I have no idea why it made such a big difference, but it did. It's still the stock front sway bar. To my knowledge, you cannot, there's really no one who makes like a replacement front sway bar. It's there, it's like it does its job. But I had to track down those 2 bushings from some random company that makes bushings for vehicles, because you search it up and like the 8th link on Google is like this Australian company, and then after you click on that link and you go to buy it, it'll tell you like, oh, here's our American website, and you can buy it from them. It's like $12 for the front sway bar bushings. They're all polyurethane. They're great.
Is it Nolathane? I think Nolathane's Australian. That's what I did for bushings.
I think they do make a set, but they're like $30 and then like $60 to ship. Okay. These were from America. It's like, I think it's US Pro bushings or something. Like it's some random company. Really good bushings. They were $12. It was like $5 shipping. They got here super quick. They did a great job. Like, they're awesome. I love them. In terms of the front suspension, I think that's everything. If we move along to the rear, so I have the BC coilovers as well in the rear. So to kind of adjust, I wanted camber and caster, you know, I want to go lower. I want to kind of tuck the wheels in just a little bit to, you know, not scrape on the fender liner. I have Megan Racing arms for all 3, I believe. It's like trailing, toe, and something else. So I have all those replaced with adjustable Megan Racing arms. I got those on a pretty good sale. Those they go on sale from I think it's Coilover Depot. Sells them for, they go on sale like all the time. They're a really good pickup. Can adjust camber, toe, multi adjustment points on like everything. So yeah, the rear adjustable arms are definitely like a really good pickup, especially if you're doing anything coilover wise. They just make it super easy to adjust everything and to get like the camber spec you want. I'm not running a whole lot of camber. I'm running about negative 2.8 degrees of camber in the rear, and then the BC coilovers in the front have a little adjustable point on there. So I'm running about negative 0.8 in the front for camber, about negative 2.8 in the rear. It's not a crazy amount, you know. You're not gonna be like one of those stands out camber kids, you know, but it makes it feel better, especially going around corners. Everything I've done on the car, honestly, has made it feel like a car not of this like type of this class. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is like a luxury 4-door sedan. In some areas, like, I feel like I can take corners super well, like better than I was able to in like other like front wheel drive cars. Like, everything just, it handles super well after all the suspension work. And then as for the rear, I also did the rear sway bar. I believe it's Whiteline makes a brand new beefy rear sway bar, because the stock one is probably like 9 millimeters thick. Like, it is so flimsy you can literally like bend it just by holding it. Like, it's ridiculous. And the stock sway bar end links are plastic. So that's telling you a whole lot about how rigid that thing is. So the new one, I want to say it's closer to like 14 to 16 millimeters thick. Like, it doesn't seem like it's crazy big, but it's super solid. I mean, it just tightened up the rear suspension like a lot. It's made a big difference. And then that also comes with polyurethane bushings. Like, the sway bar comes with them. So that's all good there. Handles really well. I have Excessive made, I don't think they even sell them anymore, but they have like a quick disconnect sway bar end link that I put on instead, just because I didn't want the plastic. But they're honestly not the best. Like, they move around a bunch. Like, I can kind of hear them clicking sometimes. So honestly, if you just go on to really anywhere that sells sway bar end links and you just find kind of the measurement you need and make sure that, I believe they're both facing the same direction, you should be good in terms of getting sway bar end links. There is some more stuff I want to do to the rear. On the kind of on the back of the hub and the whole assembly there, where the knuckle is, where the arms will meet, there's the 2 bushings for, I believe it's the tow arm, and I think it's one of the traction arms, that I want to replace, because Excessive does make a kit for those. Those are like $170 each though. Those are pricey, but Excessive makes amazing bushings. Pretty much half this car. I could put a giant Excessive manufacturing sticker on the back. Like, they pretty much make most of the shit for this car. But there's also subframe bushings for these, which people do highly recommend replacing while you're doing a bunch of other stuff in there. So that's next up on the list. There's also, I'm trying to do a Mark III Supra LSD swap. And again, Excessive Manufacturing makes an adapter kit, because the stock rear diffs on these are, I believe it's like a 3-point mount system. And on the Mark III Supra LSDs, it's a 4-point. So you pretty much have to get these 2 little brackets and weld them on, and then the diff will just bolt right in. And then there's also a separate reinforcement plate for the rear diff on the subframe that you can get from Excessive for about $40. And that makes this rear subframe a lot more rigid. If you're doing burnouts or you're really drifting, you probably should look into getting that. I don't have it on yet, but I do plan on doing that when I actually tear everything out, because the rear subframes on these can crack pretty easy. I know a couple people who have done that just because they're doing burnouts, or, you know, they hit a curb and it's like, okay, their suspension's fine, but that subframe just like cracks. But aside from that, that's really a couple more things to finish up on the rear. And I'm trying to get the whole W58 manual transmission swap. And that's really the kind of the future plans for this car. There's a couple more cosmetic pieces I'm looking for, but that's just kind of all coming down to when they become available. And aside from that, I think that's kind of the full teardown of the build.
Okay guys, we're gonna go for a quick drive in the Cressida, and you can kind of get a feel for what it's like to drive one of these, or if you're looking at buying one of these, kind of the driving experience. So, just throw this back here.
Sorry, let me move my Toyota Adventure Outfitter water bottle.
Shameless plug. Okay. It's been a while since I've been in here. Let's see. Let's see, ready? So luxury.
Oh yeah.
Then our lap belt. Yeah, so we'll just cruise around a little bit.
Yeah, this is the emergency.
Yeah, that's pretty loud.
The first time I got in this thing, Devesh had left those up. And I was like, what is this? What's going on?
It's a low oil pressure indicator.
Yeah. Yeah, when I first time I ever looked at this thing, I was having dinner with a group of my coworkers, and at the time I owned a Nissan Xterra. You want me to drive up left?
Just go down here, and then there's a turnaround, and then go down this road, and just drive around in this little area for a second.
So I had a Nissan Xterra at the time, and someone's doing burnouts, and I hated it. Not that it was like by default a bad rig. It's just that one specifically, like it had over 200,000 miles. It was leaking like every kind of fluid, and it like needed pretty much all the suspension, like all the bushings were out. It felt like you were driving on like ice skates. It was terrible, but I didn't want the car anymore. I'm like, I needed something else. And my coworker who I bought it from was like, yeah, I'm selling the Cressida for like $2,000.
Such a good deal.
Yeah, like it was, I was like, yeah, I'll buy it. So we looked at it in the parking lot, and at first, like, I had never actually seen him drive it, because he has a Nissan hard body that he turboed and then recently just blew up. But he was like, yeah, I'm trying to put more money into that, so I want to sell it. So pretty much immediately I was like, let me get the money together. Like, let me sell this thing and give you the money so I can buy it. And that's pretty much what happened. I bought it, like, he was like, I went over there, cash in hand, ready to buy it. He was like, you don't want to, like, test drive it or anything? I'm like, nope, just, there we go. We signed it. You know, told Washington State I paid like $100 for it.
Yeah.
So I have to pay tax, but, what are we?
This thing's comfy. I mean, I was in it a long time ago, but
You were in it before the coilovers got put on.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like, I'd say smoother, but it was like you'd hit a speed bump and you'd go flying.
yeah.
Like there was nothing dampening.
I don't know. I think it did oscillate a bunch. Like as soon as you hit something, you kind of womp, womp.
And then on this too, it's like just it's a lot better.
I mean, like just going around these parking lots, you can feel that it's like so much tighter.
Yeah, like it doesn't like want to like kick out really because it's got that open diff. And the auto, like it does not want to fight you on it. But it handles really well, especially after everything's done. It wants to like turn in really quick. Like, let's see if there's no one coming. Like from just standing here, like full lock, like U-turn. Like I can pretty much turn in like any radius I want.
That's pretty cool. Whee! Yeah, we're just doing circles in the street right now. So
yeah, like no issue with hitting curbs or anything. Like it handles super well. There is, I don't know if you can kind of hear it, but like if you're at pretty much a complete stop, and this is the way that the automatic transmission is set up, when you hit the gas, it like legitimately doesn't do anything for a second. Like it just like stops. I'm like, oh no, we're getting to the main road. Okay, let me just.
Yeah, you wouldn't think this would have such a tight turning radius.
You know, I honestly don't think it did before I did all the suspension work on it. I think the front caster, setting it so far positive, has definitely helped. I think having the camber on definitely makes it turn in a lot better. But I think the steering rack, honestly, was the biggest improvement. I didn't actually sit there and like measure them to see how that was lining up. But I think with the RCAs on there too, like it just, everything about what I've done to the geometry just like makes it turn in really well. There have actually been times where like I've oversteered. I'm like, oh, that wasn't like me slipping out or something like that. I just thought I was gonna need a lot more turning radius than I ended up needing. I don't know what this person is doing. Okay, let me go this way and just immediately turn back around. But yeah, like everything on this car has felt super great. The rear sway bar definitely helps keep the rear end straight. I'm always surprised that like it doesn't want to kick out.
Yeah. Especially with a thicker sway bar in the rear, because doesn't that promotes a bit more oversteer as opposed to understeer.
Yeah, like if I'm really turning it, I'm like, you'd think it would want to go whichever way it was going prior. I think it's mainly the open diff just like really does its job of just like letting it keep track of things very nicely without, you know, slipping.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much the first thing I did when I bought this, aside from just like, okay, maintenance, oil change, blah, blah, blah. I pretty much, the last like real car I owned that I like put really any time into was my 2008 Scion TC that I crashed in the ice because we got black ice, surprisingly. Is this?
Yeah, I think we go around.
And I kind of did the exact opposite of what I did on this car. Was like I did all of the eBay headlight. I mean, it was like my first car. I was like 18. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna throw like eBay headlights and tail lights and a wing and you know, trick it out and debadge it. And in this car, I'm like, yeah, I've done a couple exterior things, but like it is all handling and performance.
Yeah.
And I feel like anything I have done, it's all like, I really consider this to be like an OEM plus build. Like I'm not really going too crazy with anything aftermarket. Like I'm not running an aftermarket body kit. You know, I wanted to go JDM, you know, as many JDM parts as I could actually get and reasonably afford.
Yeah.
So here's that funky cluster here where you've got like your settings for your speed. So low, high, 1, 2, your angle, how it's coming out. It's got auto. I've never really used it efficiently. I don't know how that really determines what is what. Something really funny that I don't actually know if this messes with anything, but because these are all buttons, you can press it on like front defog and rear foot, and then also put it on recirculate. I have no idea what that's doing because that's like any car with like electronic controls or like dials for all that. Like you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't run recirc and defog for the front at the same time. You have your actual rear defogger switch. That's the alternator. So you see how everything's running? I'm in drive. So my seat's all the way back. Oh, is it detecting something? Oh, so this is using the draw right now.
Yeah.
So if I turn that off, that's the alternator. Or if I go,
Yeah, the idle's dropping.
yeah, 80 amps. Not a lot. Not a lot. But you know, it is what it is. It doesn't really have too many like interior storage options. Like there's no sunglasses holder somewhere up here. These are the cup holders. Like,
Yeah.
it's dusty, but like these are your cup holders, and these don't fit anything. I'll get like a large boba, and like the lid is like hitting against this, and like it's all jumbled. I can't even fit like a medium from like Panda Express in this thing. Those things are ridiculously large. Cigarette lighter, cigarette ashtray. And then it's got these like door card slots that you can put like books in.
That's pretty
Which
nice.
I've got my T-Port handbook here. Shout out T10.
You always got to keep that on you. I still have mine.
I know.
on
I'm like, dude, my FTS could show up to my house.
Dude, FTS is showing up while you're in the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm
you gotta
like,
make you always have that on you.
There's supposed to be showing up one, and I gotta fill out some info I've taken.
Yeah.
What else about this funky interior? So I've got this, the ECTS power button, which reveals. I just wiped this down. Which turns that little light on, and essentially it just lets the transmission rev up higher before it shifts. So
Yeah.
round, if you're really pushing it, you can go like I don't know, 28 to like 3,400, and then it'll shift. But it is a 3-speed automatic with a fourth overdrive gear, which is just right here, which you can kind of see. It's
overdrive.
It's fun because it's just like, okay, uphill, go power mode, you know. I can put in low or second. So this is my I'm going to race someone gear and lose terribly. This thing kind of sounds a little like gnarly if you like get it up. I don't know how much space I'm gonna have here. It does not take very much to get this thing like in the rev range. But if you like put it in second and just like, it gets louder, but
yeah. Sounds like a muffled truck almost.
Yeah, I mean, I know these I think they put the 7M in something else in some other territory. I want to say like some truck, but you know, they put every random engine in every other car in every other territory.
Yeah.
Like these in like Indonesia came with 22Rs.
That's funny.
I think, and then the one GF in some states or some areas, some countries. But yeah, overall, like, even though the automatic is a slush box, it is pretty comfortable. Like if you're looking for like a daily, like I've never been like, oh man, this thing is slot. Like it doesn't slap into the next gear. Like it does shift smoothly, but it's not performance. It's not fun. It's just, okay, it's doing its job and I'm not really thinking about it. But it does a pretty decent job of doing what it was designed to do. This is not designed to be, this is not a Mark III Supra. This has the engine and some of the like rear suspension or that like similar to a Mark III Supra, but it's not, this is not a Mark III Supra. So the fact that it does handle this well for being like a luxury, you know, I mean, this at the time, this was a full-sized sedan.
This is a luxury sedan.
So for a full-sized luxury sedan in North America, like this is pretty big. Like I don't think anyone else at the time had a car bigger than this from a Japanese manufacturer.
Yeah, I really don't think so either.
Because I don't think like did they even have Maximas in the late 80s?
I think the first gen came out late 80s, early 90s.
I don't know if that was the same size or bigger. But I know like, what is it, Infiniti M60s? Mm-hmm. Like I don't think those were any bigger than this. Obviously, this is not a Lincoln town car, but
it fits in with modern traffic today, but this would have been big back in the day.
Yeah, like it's definitely pretty wide. I do run into an issue quite often though, where I feel like this, I'm all the way back right now on my seat, and sometimes I feel like it could go back just a little bit more. I'm only 5'10", but like this, I feel like I could have a little bit more room. But that's mainly because the rear seats are not super long. Mm-hmm. They're cushy. You know, I've gotten 4 passengers, like not including myself in this car, and everyone sat pretty comfortably, except leg room wise. Like there's nothing back here. Like this is like a standard coffee cup, and this touches both seats. Like there's not a lot. But if you're just driving like another person around and like putting some stuff in the back seats like we have now, it's perfect. You know, the power demand is there. I'm sure we'll do another video when I get the W58 in here.
I think that'd be a good review.
Let's see, I gave it to our friend in October. So maybe by this October.
Gosh.
I know we'll do a yearly update.
Yeah, every time I come back.
Yeah. Because there's a couple other cosmetic things I want to do, and then, you know, getting the W58 in here. And
yeah, I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
so nice.
That power delivery, that final, like, drive ratio is just going to feel so nice. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of features in this car, too, that don't make you wish you had a newer car.
Yeah. Like,
for instance, that side used to have power seating, but, like, I've got... You know, all this. I've got the classic lumbar support of like
pump it up,
pump it, depress it. It's actually funny, when I swapped in this cloth seat from the original vinyl one, the control over here for the electronics, when I would go back it would stick. And I was like, well, can I just replace this? And like I had to like peel off the cover and like take all this stuff out and like really dissect the seats to like swap this hardware over. And after doing that, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh my god, like, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of random bits. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend picking up one of these if it's not egregious for the price and in bad condition.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like, I really enjoy this car, but this car is like in very good shape for what it is. I know that there are usually some really good deals on like Bring a Trailer or, you know, other car auction sites. But
how is it raining? It's so sunny out. What a scam.
It's that Pacific Northwest weather.
Yeah, that's the good stuff.
But yeah, in terms of price, like these kind of go for anywhere really in the price range. Anything up to like, I don't think I've seen one really go for more than like $6,000. Or you'll get the drift build dudes who are like, it's got a 2J, it's got full everything, it's got
full
dual
bolt-ons,
hydro e-brake, twin turbo, tuned ECU, 6 consoles, like everything on it, and they'll go for like $12,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I mean, whatever. It's more about the labor at that point. But yeah, these you can get them for a pretty good deal. Parts availability is kind of like, if you're looking for cosmetic stuff or interior pieces, you're relying on like if one occasionally pops up in the junkyard, or like if someone wants to sell you one. Part outs are your best friends for these. I've gone to like 4 different part outs. Like, this car has so many Frankenstein pieces from other vehicles. Like, there's so many random bits and pieces there that like I've swapped over or had replaced from this or that. And like everything looks, it's the same color, same interior, everything looks good, but yeah, like there's so many random little things here and there.
Okay guys, that's about all we got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. This kind of turned into a Cressida owners / buyer guide in the end, so I think that's what this will probably be titled. Thank you so much to Alex for letting me come out and film his car and take pictures. I'll have his Instagram below. If you have any other questions, I'm sure you can reach out to him. If you guys enjoyed this type of content, make sure to like, subscribe. I have a bunch of other kind of build breakdown videos similar to this with other cars, other models, makes, so make sure to check that out. Okay, peace.
Bye.